So if you've taken a programming course before, you know the importance of putting comments in your code. You describe what the program does. Put your name at the top. That's called a comment block when you put your name up at the top. That's interesting. Hope I don't need this. Better save it. Alright. So here's what I would consider a fairly well commented program. And I would like for y'all to follow something like this. And I should post this as a document. Guidelines. So comment block up at the top. Put your name, etc. Right? The general date, like the due date of the assignment or whatever. You know. Assignment number. A short explanation of what it is. You know. Calculates the average temperature of Mars. Whatever, you know. Okay, then when you declare your variables, so every program should have a comment block up at the top. B, a comment for each variable you create, unless it's, I'm just going to put within reason. That sure is nebulous, but like if I'm typing in code up here and I'm just wanting to demonstrate that I is equal to 3 modulus 4, I'm not going to put a comment there saying what I'm going to be using an I variable for, right? If you give good variable names like height in inches and weight in pounds, stuff like that, then the need for comments on each variable is dramatically lessened. And then a comment for each, I'm going to call it a block of functionality. So examples of this would be stuff like int queue length or file size. That's pretty obvious, but go ahead and describe what it is. Not that we know how to determine a file size, right? Length of the file in bytes, you know, and then double length, or, you know, volume of the shape in liters, right? Because otherwise you don't know what the volume is. That kind of thing. So these are just examples. Now if it's silly, you know, string first name, I'm probably not going to yell at you if you don't put first name. Right? Maybe that's a bit much. Not a bad thing anyways. You can put that there, or you could put first name of the user or of the patient or whatever. You know, you can go ahead and expand it out. Stuff like that. Would like to see a comment for every variable you create within reason. Then a comment for each block of functionalities. Comments like this. Declare variables, or just declarations. And then ask user for input. And then perform XYZ calculations. And then display output, right? These are big comments which would be filled in with a bunch of code. Int blah blah blah, you know, blah 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 blah, like that, right? You know, and then ask the user for input, you know, cout blah blah blah, cin blah blah, that kind of stuff. You know, you might have a whole bunch of that stuff. Then perform XYZ calculations, B equals blah 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 times C times blah, whatever, you know, many calculations as you have to do, and then cout, you know, blah 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 B, that kind of stuff, right? You're breaking the code up into sections, just like, you know, chapters of a story. Each chapter might have a title. That's what the declarations are for. I mean, that's what the comments are for. You know, some people go to a lot of trouble and they make them look really pretty. You know, they don't like that kind of stuff. I don't care if you do that, but I do want you to differentiate between where you're declaring things, where you're asking for input, where you're performing calculations, and then where you're displaying your output. The declarations part, you can mix your declarations in with your code, right? You could have some declarations up at the top, but then you might have some more where you're performing calculations, and you might have some more where you display the output. So it's not like you have to go to a huge amount of trouble to create every variable up at the top of the code. Although some people do that. They say, okay, all the variables I create, I'm going to stick up at the top of my module. That's fine. Not a bad thing. Other people just create the variables when they need them. Also not a bad thing. Up to you. Okay. Hope that's clear. And obviously this wasn't real code. These are notes. So if you typed them in, great. If you didn't, fine. Okay. And you know what I mean by blah, blah. I mean, I'm not going to go in and I'm not going to actually write code that asks the user for input, performs XYZ calculations. Maybe the next time we do one in class, I'll go ahead and fill that in, right? You know, or I'll document it the way that I want it. It's also a good idea to document what formula you're using, right? So when it just says perform XYZ calculation, go ahead and say what you're doing. So see a comment for each block of functionality. D, comment your formulas. You know, this is the, you know, BMI calculation formula, or calculate average rainfall, or, you know, calculate volume, gas volume law, right? You know, whatever it is. And you'll get that information straight from the assignment, right? Okay. Try to comment your code. Professionals comment their code. You can be sure that Call of Duty and World of Warcraft or whatever, all that code is incredibly well commented because they have large teams of people working on it. And so you need to be able to step in, see what somebody else has written, and then make some modifications to it. I also guarantee that if you look at your code 2 years after you've written it, you're not going to remember exactly how it works. You may not have remember even writing it. So you'll look at it and be confused unless there's good comments. So some companies require, you know, certain number of comments per certain lines of code, or they may say every module has to have this comment, that, you know, these comments about it. It's a professional thing to do. So comments are ignored by the compiler. You can use that to comment out sections of code. What does that mean? Well, if I've written some code, you know, like this, C out, enter your height, and then C in into the height variable, and then later on I decide I don't want to ask them for their height anymore, I'm just going to hard code it. You could comment it out like that, and then put, you know, height is equal to, you know, 63 or whatever, you know. This is called commenting out the code. You do that, that code is no longer part of your program. Now it's still in the source, but it's no longer compiled. Now you don't want to litter your program with commented out code. You know, if the code has more commented out code than it does, you know, real code, then it's getting very hard to read. But, you know, if temporarily you're trying to figure something out and you're going to try a new way of doing it, it's okay to comment it out. And when I'm demonstrating stuff in here, often I'll comment out the code because, you know, we'll show one way of doing it, then we'll change it to another way, and then we'll change it to another way. But I want a record of all those changes because these are serving as notes. And if we just deleted that code, you wouldn't be able to remember the other ways we did it. So you can comment out blocks of code. Two kinds of comments. Single line comments or multi line comments. Single line comments are just slash slash. Multi-line comments start with a slash star and then a star slash. These are kind of cool for commenting out massive amounts of code, because I could go up to the top, put a star slash, I could go to the bottom, put slash star, and boom, the whole thing is commented out. The only problem is you can't nest multi-line comments, meaning that if I put another one up here and then another one down here trying to comment out the code, it treats this one as the end of the comment block. And then when it hits this one, it goes, you didn't have a comment block open. So you can't nest multi-line comments. Yeah. What are they used for? Indicate the purpose of the program, describe the variables, explain complex sections of code. Named constants. These are things that should not change inside the program until you go and edit the code. Right? The number of states in the United States is probably going to be 50 for a while, until Puerto Rico is given, statehood or something like that. So if you just said int number of states is equal to 50, then later on in the code you might forget that that indicated the number of states in the United States, and you might change it. Okay, well, I'm just going to process, these 10 states, that I'm collecting the census data for, and you might change num states equal to 10 further down here. And you might do some processing, and then you might go, okay, well, the next batch is going to be states as 15. Anyways, but you have some formulas that depend on this being 50. So by allowing yourself to change it, you're breaking those formulas. And so things like speed of light, or pi 3.14159, or maximum users, or things like that. Things that aren't supposed to change in the program until you actually open the file. If the user is supposed to type it in when the program's running, it's not going to be a constant, right? That's a variable. It's supposed to change. But a constant is something that doesn't change. And in this language, you denote it with the word const. In Java, you don't use the word const. You use the word final. In Python, there's no such thing. Your constants are supposed to, and when I say supposed to, it means it's common practice, be named all uppercase with underscores. That's a professional way of doing it. Am I going to hunt you down and yell at you if you don't name your constants uppercase? Well, maybe I should, and I probably won't, but do it that way. So anything that's not supposed to change in your program that the user's not going to edit should be made a constant. Now, why is that? What if I had this tax rate being used, and so I wrote 200 lines of code, and the tax rate was referenced 17 times. So in the code, I said, total is equal to that times 0.0675, and then later on I said, price profit is equal to this minus 0.0675, and then later on I say, summary is equal to, and then I make a mistake at 0.0767 or something like that. I messed up. The tax rate's not the same throughout my program. If I made it a variable, made it a constant, then it'd be guaranteed to be the same throughout the entire program. That's a big deal. What if you typed in pi by hand, 3.14, in one part of the program, and then later on you looked up pi and you wrote it in for 10 digits. And then another time somebody came in and they wrote pi out to 8 digits. Well, your calculations are no longer going to be exact. Now, pi is not a perfect example because the C has a library that has a value for pi embedded in it. But you get the idea. If it's a number, there are things called magic numbers. Magic numbers are just numbers that are typed into the code. 703. I'm calculating somebody's BMI, and I take their weight and I divide it by their height and multiply it by 703. Somebody else coming up and looking at that code is going to go, what's 703? They're not going to have a clue. So you probably ought to make 703 a constant and put a comment next to it, BMI conversion ratio, something like that. So at least they can Google it up, find out what a BMI conversion ratio is. Because are there more than one? Yeah, there sure is. What if you're using metric units rather than pounds and inches? You have to use a different constant. So Magic numbers are just numbers that appear out of nowhere in the program. And what I mean up here, out of nowhere, is you just see them as you're scrolling up and down the code. 1,000, 325, 5. What do those numbers mean? Well, 1,000 was the number of test data that you're calculating. 5 is the number of users who can use the system simultaneously. You're going to want to make those named constants so that somebody looking at the code will see X is equal to number of data elements. Y is equal to max number of users, right? Makes the code much more readable. So here's an example. It's a dumb example in a way. I would not make diameter a constant because that's implying that it'll absolutely never change until the user edits the program. Would we keep a program around where you had to change it every time you wanted to calculate a new circumference? No, eventually you're probably going to wind up asking the user for the circumference. So I wouldn't make that a constant. On the other hand, down here where it said circumference is equal to pi times diameter, if it just said circumference is equal to 3.14159 times 10, and it didn't have any comments, I wouldn't know what that 10 meant. Well, what is that? I might misremember. Oh, that's got to be the radius. Well, no, it's not the radius. It's the diameter. So, yeah, if I had a 10 here and then a 3.14159 there, those are so-called magic numbers. Those are hard-coded numbers. Hard-coding meaning they're typed directly into the program. The user doesn't enter them, the programmer did. Magic numbers, hard-coded numbers, should instead be put into comments unless there's something as trivial as 0, right? I'm not going to define a constant to hold the number 0. Programming style, and there's a whole slide, a single slide dedicated to this. This is so important, huh? But it is important. Visual organization of the source code. Use blanks, spaces, and tabs to make your code easy to read. I've had students who didn't want to add blank lines to their code. They didn't like the way it looked. Okay, fine. That's your programming style. I'm not going to yell at you about it. Most of the rest of the planet likes using spaces to add so-called white space. It's like a book, If you didn't have any paragraph breaks, the text would be a lot harder to read. But doing all that stuff does not affect the syntax of the program. Unlike Python, where you have to tab over everything just exactly right, in the C code, you don't have to tab anything. But it looks nasty if you don't tab it correctly. Please tab all your code correctly. And when you're cutting and pasting, I realize that the tabs get off, right? You took this section of code and it had been tabbed over 4, and then you took this section of code and it had been tabbed over 2, and you put them together, and now the tabs are messed up. Yeah, I get it. Fix it, right? I'm probably not going to yell. I'm probably not going to, count off for it, but I'll probably put a comment in your feedback. Make sure that, because when I'm helping y'all debug in the class, or especially if you come and bring your laptop to me in my office and ask for help, if I can't follow the code, I'm going to sit there for 3 minutes and fix all your tabs. Wasting my time. Kind of tedious for you to watch. Hopefully your face burns with embarrassment, but whatever. You get the idea. I try to follow good tab practices in here, but it's easier up here because I'm just typing code from top to bottom, and I'm not modifying my code later and moving things around. And I know the tabs can get messed up, but do try to keep your indentation levels good. All right, I need to check something. Okay, so what's the due date of this one gonna be? It's gonna be a week from today. Sometimes I make y'all do the quizzes in class. That might be a fun thing to do for the first one, fun being a relative term, right? Let's work on it together. Go to quizzes. Open the quiz up.
Which one?
We're doing chapter 2. And for some reason, even when I'm in student mode, it doesn't let me open the quiz that way, so I just have to go into preview mode in a momento. The reason we're going to take it together is just to familiarize you with how my quizzes work, because the way my quizzes work is very similar to the way the exams work. And you don't actually have to take it right now. You could do it on your own later. Wouldn't be a bad idea to retake it later, but if we're all going to look at it right now, we may as well. Now I'm going to do something to make it fill the page, if I possibly can. I guess I can't.
Are we going to do the quiz together?
Yeah, we're going to do it together right now. It's going to be the easiest quiz on the planet, right? So well, that's why I'm recommending that you go ahead and do it again on your own. Alrighty, so it's an open book quiz. It's even an open prof quiz, right? Although that's kind of a gross idea. So don't use Visual Studio or Xcode or another C++ tool to figure out the answers. What I mean is if I say x is equal to 10 divided by 3, and I want you to know that 10 divided by 3 rounds down to 3 because they were both integers. You don't learn anything by opening up Visual Studio saying x is equal to 10 divided by 3 printed out. Right. You could get the right answer that way, but you don't learn anything from it. So for the quizzes, certainly, I want you to do these things by hand. And on an exam, it wastes your time to do these things in Visual Studio. If you want to go back after you've taken everything, and you want to check some of your answers with Visual Studio, that's cool. But if you're sitting there typing in question after question into your C++ editor in order to try to get the answers, you're not going to get done in an hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes. Alrighty, of course we agreed to these rules. I had a smart aleck choose false, and so I didn't give them any credit on the exam, and I made them type it in again, right? Because if you don't agree to the rules, why don't you agree? And then they just thought they were being funny. So I wasn't mad at them, but they had to take it again. Which data type should hold a series of characters like somebody's name? Well, what does an int hold? Yeah, answer for numbers. And bools hold trues and falses. Doubles also hold numbers. What's the difference between an int and a double? What kind of Yeah, one of them has decimal points, which is double. Ints do not. So it's going to be a string. A string could hold somebody's name. Let me know if my questions are in a different order than yours. Sometimes it's randomized, which makes these...
Yeah, mine's in a different order.
Ah, great. Well then, y'all are going to have to scroll up and down to keep up with me. It's not too hard. What you do is you do this. Control F. Assuming and then see if you have the right question. I think I only have like 20 questions. Hopefully it won't be too hard to find. I'm sorry about that, guys. Did everybody find?
Question was number 2.
Yeah. So going to question 3.
Wait, can you scroll up?
Yeah, why is it string? Because that's a numeric data type, that's a numeric data type. Now realize that yours are in a different order. I tell you what, guys, everybody back out of the, do a save and a submit. Just go to the bottom and submit the quiz. And I'm going to, go to the bottom, save all responses, submit the quiz. I'm going to de-click the thing that says random questions. I apologize for that, and then we're going to all take it again. And I'll delete the first time you did it. Alrighty then. Used to be easy to dictate that the questions were random or not. Shuffling is on. Yeah, okay, let me change that. No shuffling. All right, did everybody get their quiz submitted? Don't worry that it said you made a 0 or anything like that. Then try to take it again. Can everybody do that? Can you restart the quiz? Do I see any head shaking? No. Do I see any head shaking? Yes. Who got into the quiz the second time? So is the second question, let's make sure, about valid variable names. I want to make sure that we're all looking at the same thing. What's your second question?
Which of the following are legal variable names?
Right, right. Okay, so we're all good now. We're all good. Which of the following are legal variable names? Well, we had some rules for variable names. How about this top one, tax space rate? Is that good or bad?
Bad.
That's bad because it's got a space in it. I would think it was 2 different variables. How about tax rate percent?
No, because we can't have a percent.
Exactly. That'd be great if you know, if we were calculating the modulus and tax rate with no spaces.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah, that's cool.
that was good.
Somebody would argue that, oh, the R should be capitalized, but yeah, who cares? How about that one, 2016?
Nope.
And yours are probably in another order, but you can follow along. And then tax rate 2016. Whoops, that's not valid. But that one is.
You need to go and click the top 2.
Yeah, what the heck am I doing? Alrighty, I'm just clicking them all as I go down. Text, spaces are bad, percent signs are bad, numbers at the beginning are bad, the rest of these are legal. Is that okay? Got that? If it's a binary operator, how many operands does it need? Binary means 2. Yep. There's also an operator called the ternary operator. Ternary meaning like try, meaning 3. We're not talking about that yet. Okay. Assuming you have the following declarations. Int, A is equal to 0, B is equal to 0, C is equal to 0. Write an assignment that does the following operation. Store 10 into C. I'm going to give you the wrong answer. 10 is equal to C. What's wrong with that?
We have the variable on the wrong side.
Yep, the variable has to go on the left-hand side. So it should be, very good, Daniel. 10, it should be C is equal to 10.
Quick question. So,
Yeah.
like, when we're reviewing for like the exam and stuff, will these quizzes be open?
Right, right.
With all the answers, so we can.
All the answers you made, right.
Okay.
When you're reviewing it, it doesn't show you the correct answer, but it shows your answer and marks it wrong. And then I may put the correct answer in a comment. It's not guaranteed. Like if it's just multiple choice and I want you to, you know, I want you to look it up yourself, I'm probably not going to give you the right answer. But if it's something else, I may.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. However, on test day, when you're in here taking the exam, the quizzes are going to be closed so that you can't just go back because the questions, there might be duplicate questions. Doesn't mean you can't print them out and reference them, right, since it's open notes. Okay. Is that the same one? No. Store the value of A plus B into A plus 10 into B. So what should I write there? What goes on the left-hand side? B, and then what?
Equals
A plus 10 or 10 plus 6.
You said no spaces.
Yeah, please, no spaces in your answer. The difference is that if you add spaces, it counts it as wrong, and I have to go back and count it as right. So it just saves me time. I am going to go back. You know, I grade everything by hand just for things like that. But what if I made a mistake? So, alrighty. Multiply 3.14 times B and store into C. Okay, so if you're thinking that you can do B to the power of 2 to do B times B, not in this language. You Python users remember B **2, not in this language. There is math.pow, or maybe it's just POW in his language, which would be acceptable, but why not just use the times? So that's the variable we're storing into. What am I going to do here? C equals 3.14 times B times B, semicolon.
Does it matter if the letters are capitalized?
If I show lowercase here, they have to be lowercase here.
Okay.
What happens if you make a mistake? It gets counted wrong, and then I come back and I take mercy on you. But the programming language doesn't take mercy on you. If you type it in uppercase one place and lowercase in another, then it won't compile.
Okay.
Store the character K into C. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, there's two things wrong because I forgot the semicolon, but that is not valid.
Don't have.
I don't have quotes around it. The quotes is how it's indicated that it's a character. If it didn't have quotes around it, it would be a variable named K. If it's a character, if it's a single character, you use apostrophe, single quotes. If it's a whole string, if it's multiple characters, you use double quotes. That's different from Python where it didn't matter. It didn't care which one you used. Alrighty. There's always more than one way to do these things. That's why I have to grade them in by hand. Right, you could do this. You could say B is equal to B minus 1, right? There's another way. You could say B is equal, or excuse me, B minus equals 1. You Python users might like that. Semicolon. You can also do B minus minus. That does the same thing. It subtracts 1 from B and stores the result in B. Maybe you could cook up another one. You know, B is equal to, okay, I'm going to go crazy here. C is equal to B. C equals C minus 1. B is equal to C. Okay. I'll look at it and I'll go, yeah, that'll work. You'd get credit for it. But, you know, which do you like better? Do you like B minus minus, or do you like B equals B minus 1? That's my favorite. If you're just subtracting 1 or adding 1, use minus minus or plus plus. Alrighty, if I wanted to go to a new line, which one of these things is better? And don't be fooled by that STD : business. Even if you don't remember what that does, that is still valid. So, both of them are right. Right, you can use ENDL or you can do \n. They mean the same thing. Yeah. See, two of y'all were waiting for me to grade the quiz, and I had forgotten that I had opened it, so that's why I hadn't gotten to it yet, Daniel. I'm glad you reminded me, and then I forgot again. Okay, so use the following declarations. Write a line of code that will print my name as Bob Roberts. Let me show you what half the class always does the first time they answer the question. Some people will do this. My name is Bob Roberts. Now come on, is that what I want, guys?
No.
No. Why? Because I said using the following variable declarations. I want you to use those variables. Don't make me add 20 lines of legalese to the question specifying not what to do. I tend to get more and more specific as people do that. Okay, another thing that people do is, this is getting closer to the right answer. I hate that this space is so little. Okay, C out. My name, this is another wrong answer, but it's better, is F name, L name. Maybe you remember to do the NDL, maybe not. But that's wrong too. What's wrong with that? A lot better. You'll get credit for it, whereas you wouldn't have got credit for the first one. But what is that going to print out? It's going to print out, my name is Bob Roberts.
Oh.
Why? Because I didn't put a space here. And I didn't put any kind of space there. So to make that correct, I would need to do that. And I would need to add an extra thing here. Now, when I've said over and over that spaces don't matter, they do matter when you're displaying stuff to the user, right? The user likes to see spaces in the right place. So if it looked like that, it would print out correctly. So this would be the correct answer there. And could we take out some spaces to stop it from being so long? We could. You know me, I leave the spaces in when I'm typing it out, typing it in up here to make it easy to read. Okay, if you're doing a single line comment, what a coincidence. We just mentioned that again.
Can you go back?
Yeah, sure. To that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm going to space it out again to make it easier to read.
But don't space in the answer.
I wouldn't care. Even if it's marked wrong, it's not a big deal. For something that long, I rarely expect your spacing to match mine. Whenever I say leave spaces out, somebody does this. You know, and I understand why they did it. I don't yell at them, but I put a comment. When I said spaces, I just meant, you know, okay.
Better start working on that legal fine print.
Right, right. So we good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. What two-character symbol does a single line comment? Well, it's certainly not hashtag. That's the wrong language. It's that. What symbol always begins a preprocessor directive?
The hashtag.
Yep. Pound sign, hashtag, octothorpe, as the English call it. Number sign. I like that one. What symbol resembles the modulus operator?
Percent.
Yep, percent sign. Same in this language as it is in the other ones you've used. What will the above line of code print? Now see, when I make it real text like that, it'd be awfully easy for you to copy and paste it. On an exam, usually I make that an image so that you can't copy and paste it. So don't get used to the idea. But we can look at it. We can figure this out real easy. All right, if A is 5 and B is 3, then if X is A plus B, what is X? 8. Yeah, that one's not too hard. Here we go now. We need to calculate Y. Y is A divided by B. Now remember, if you divide an integer by an integer, what do you get?
Whole numbers.
You get a whole number. So what is 5 divided by 3? Rounded down, it's 1. And lastly, what is 5 modulus 3? 5 divided by 3 is 1 with a remainder of, don't say 0.6, it's with a remainder of 2. That good for everybody? Do we need to do another lecture on modulus? Always catches somebody. What keyword is used to mark a variable as a constant? Well, we just talked about that one. Const. Alrighty. What data type is appropriate for something that counts 1 to 10 all whole numbers? Well, doubles are floating point types. So that's the thing to key in on. If it's supposed to be whole numbers, it's supposed to be an int. What if it's going to contain a series of characters? Seems like this is a repeat of a question. String, yep. Because what's a bool? A bool is a true or false. And an int is a whole number. And a double is a floating point. All right, if you have that kind of number, is it an int? Nah. Is it a string? No. Is it a bool? No, it's not a true or false. That means it's a double. Ooh, and there's a question 21. I thought we stopped at 20. All righty. If it's going to be true or false, I keep saying this one, that should be easy at this point. Which one is it? Bool. Yeah. All righty then. I don't even remember talking about the ternary operator, and here's a question about it. Well, they mentioned it, but they didn't explain it. I guess we're going to explain it. It's a quiz question over it. Alrighty. So if you have this, A is equal to 3, and then you have if A is greater than 1, then B is equal to yes, else B is equal to no. Then what's B going to wind up being?
Yes.
It's going to be yes. Here's another way you could write it. B is equal to A greater than 1, question mark, yes, colon, no. Now, doesn't that look a little bit too programmerese? Yeah, but what it means is the thing before the question mark gets evaluated, and if it's true, the first thing after the question mark gets copied into B. And if it's false, the second thing gets copied into B. And you don't have to put the parentheses there. I just put the parentheses there to make it easy to read. Now, C is a crazy language compared to Java and some other ones. You could do this. I think this is an abomination, but you could do D++, D minus minus like that. I'm going to take the parentheses out just to make it harder to read. Okay. What does that mean? That means this is evaluated. Is A greater than 1? Yeah, sure is. Then do this. Add 1 to D. No. The book will talk about that. Just use it for this. I guess you better learn that if you're going to be, working in a team full of other, I almost said nerds. Programmers who lean towards writing the most concise code possible. This is not that hard to read once you get used to it. Is that true? Yeah, copy that one into there. Otherwise, copy that one into there. That's called the ternary operator, otherwise known as the conditional operator. So question mark is the ternary parentheses conditional operator. And this means exactly the same stuff as the code above it. So what does this one mean? This one means if A is greater than 1, then D++, else D minus minus. Am I going to ask a question of the second syntax? No. But the first one, yeah. Let's go back and look at the quiz now. Alrighty. Please enter a number. And then, if they enter a 10, that means that x is equal to 10. Is 10 less than 0? Yeah, I heard a yeah, but it's a no. So what gets copied into y?
1.
Correct. 1 gets copied into y. Because if it was true, then the negative 1 would get copied into y. But it's false, so the 1 gets copied into y. For some reason that was already selected, but I was just a random guess, I think. So, what can store the largest number, an int or a float? Well, floats support exponents, like 3 to the power of 200. Can an int store 3 to the power of 200? No, all it can store is like a number a little bit above 2 billion. So floats hold much larger numbers. Here we go again. What data type is limited to 2 billion or less? in this language, not in Python. I have to keep saying that, but I know that 3/4 of y'all took the Python class. Which data type would you use to hold a number larger than 1 to the power of 37? Now, even if you didn't remember the exact cutoff between a float and a double, if you see the word larger, it kind of implies that you need to pick the largest kind. So it would be a double. Why would it not be a long int? Because it's got an exponent. Especially if I made it like 1.2. That would have made it real clear it was not a long int. And maybe I should modify the question to do that, because I always get somebody who picks long int. Long int makes it sound like it's the biggest type, right? Because it's long. But no, just like a float can hold a larger value than a double, even though it's got the same number of bytes in it. Excuse me. Even though a float can hold a larger value than an int, a double can hold a larger value than a long. All right. Go ahead and save it and submit it.
You neglected to agree to the rules at the very beginning.
Yeah. I'm not going to submit mine, though. But, yep, everybody needs to agree to the rules. And I'll delete everybody's first submission to encourage you to take it another time without me holding your hand. All right. I hope that was as fun for y'all as it was for me, which was a lot of fun.
For the tax rate question,
This question right here.
The underscore in the middle is right for F. We chose F.
Okay. Been to way too many concerts. What's the question?
We chose F, that's right.
F is a good variable because you can use underscores. You can't use percent signs, you can't use spaces, but underscores are good. That makes sense? Okay. Well, maybe it doesn't make sense in terms of why did they allow that, but they did that to make variable names easier to read. And I think I've mentioned this before, but there are several different ways of naming variables. You could do this: patient height. You can do patient underscore height. You can do patient height like that. That's the way that all the Java folks do it. Consider the more modern way. This is the way that the programmers who were trained in the 70s do it. So I kind of like it. If you like it, that's totally cool. That one is just a little bit harder to read, right? Patient height, but it still makes sense. So that's okay. This is good. This is good. Now, if you're doing a constant, though, you should follow a very specific rule. All caps with underscores. So, int max users equals 300.
Shouldn't that be a constant?
Yes, you're right. Const int max user, right? Constant speed of light equals 6.00 times, I don't even remember. Why isn't it not jumping out to me?
6.71 times 10 to the 8th.
That'll work. Yeah, 6.71 times 10 to the 8th. Like that. That would have to be what kind of data type, not an int. Make that a double. Right. That way, if you're scrolling up and down and you see 6.71 e to the 8th, you don't have to wonder what that is. Instead, you would use the speed of light in your equation. Oops, not discussions. So we do have some homework coming up next week. Probably enough for that chapter.
You said you were going to delete the first attempt.
I will delete it, correct. Not yet. I mean, I'm not going to take the time to delete 20 right now, but I will. Expressions and interactivity. So CIN, we've already used CIN, so we're not going to talk a lot about it. It's called the standard input object. More technically, it's called the console input stream. Input stream, like a flowing river. It requires IO stream to be # included up at the beginning. Why did they call it stream? Because it pulls in a stream of data. Are there other kinds of streams besides what you can type in on the keyboard? Yeah, you can pull in a stream of data from a file. You can do so, from a sensor. You can do so off the internet. So there are different stream objects that you can use. But cout is one that's already built in for us to use as long as we # include that. To get data out of it, you use the arrow. Greater than. And you can store the input in one or more variables. So you could do this. cout, enter age, and then cin into age, and then you could do cout, enter height, and then cin into height. That's one way of doing it. Totally good. That's how I would do it, honestly. But the book will also show something like this. Enter age and height separated by a space. And then cin, age, height. Like that. That's totally legit. It works. I guess I don't have anything bad to say about it, except that what happens is that if you only type in one number, here's what it would display. Enter age and height separated by a space. That's what it would show me. And then say I typed in, okay, I'm 40. Let's pretend I formatted it well enough so that it had a colon in the space at the end, right? Okay. So I type in 40. I forget to type in the second number. It just sits there. I get frustrated and I start hitting enter. Nothing happens. Finally, I remember, oh yeah, I was also supposed to type in my height, 5.9 feet or whatever. Then it would go ahead and go. So I don't like doing it with more than one CIN, more than one variable on the same line. But if I did it that way, that's okay. It does work. And if the user typed this in, if they typed in 40 and then 5.5, which one gets stored into which? Well, the first number goes into the first variable. The second number goes into the second number. Cout, how tall is the room? Cin, height. Okay. It supposedly converts data to the type that matches the variable. So CIN is supposed to magically know that height is an int and to convert what you type in into an int. Now notice the word supposedly and my dubious tone. If you type in 5.5 here, the program's not going to like it. It may round it down to a 5 to store into an int, or it may cause the program to stop accepting input or something like that. If you think the user is going to enter decimal points, don't use an int. Use a floating point type. So a prompt. A prompt is the message that instructs you to enter data. That's the prompt. How tall is the room? So always use cout to display the prompt before each CIN statement. the good old days of using the Python input statement and putting the prompt right there inside the input. And here we have to use a pair of statements. We have to use cout and cin. There's no way around it. So cin, you can use it to input more than one value. You better tell the user that, or else they'll just type in one thing and then wonder why nothing else is happening. We could open Visual Studio and prove that, but just take it on faith that if you do this, the program's not going to proceed until you actually type in two things, separated by spaces or returns or something like that. So multiple values from the keyboard must be separated by spaces, which is a lie. You could type it in and then type in the next value on the next line. Order is important. The first value entered goes into the first variable. The second value goes into the second one. Mathematical expressions. Complex expressions using multiple mathematical operators. Well, this one's not that complex, but you know, it's got two operators. And they are processed in PEMDAS order, parentheses, exponents, multiple, well, except this language doesn't have exponents. Multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And within a single level of priority, they're done left to right. So this would be solved as 2 times pi, and then whatever that answer was would then be multiplied by radius. What gets done here first? Yeah, the parentheses happen first, so L plus W would be added together and then multiplied by 2. Now you could, an expression is just this stuff. 2 times pi times radius. That's the expression. Not even the semicolon. That's an expression. Then you can store the result of that expression in a variable, or you can print it out or something, but the expression is just that. So order of operations. I like this one, the unary negation operator. I like the name of that. But all that means is that if you have x is equal to 3 plus minus 1, that minus sign is called the Am I going to ask on an exam what the unary negation operator is? Probably not. It's a minus sign. So plus is the addition operator. And then what's equal called the assignment operator. Order of precedence is that's the highest order, right? It has to know what -1 equals before anything else happens. And then things like parentheses, multiplication and division, and modulus, those are all of equal priority. And then addition and subtraction. It's hard to work in PEMDAS when you have things like extra moduluses and unary negation. You'd wind up writing on PEMDAS. Okay, we're not going to memorize that. Fortunately, y'all already pretty much have the idea. Multiplication and division happen before adds and subtracts, and modulus is equivalent. And so you just solve left to right. So if you had this, A is equal to 6 divided by 1.5 times 2. You don't go, oh, multiplication always happens before division, so I'm going to do that first and then divide 6 by it. Instead, you just do these left to right because they're all of equal priority. So 6 divided by 1.5 is 4 times 2 is 8. Don't know why I threw the decimal in. Okay. Looks like we're not going to have any written, typed in homework today. I mean, in class. All right, I'm spacing out. Have we already hit this slide? Okay. When I look at too many different classes and they're covering the same similar material, sometimes I get deja vu.
We've gone over order of operations before, but we haven't been to this slide.
Yeah, okay. So 2 times 4 is 8 plus 5. What happens first here? Yeah, 10 divided by 2 happens first. What happens first here? Yeah. What happens first there? And what is 17 modulus 2, by the way? 1. Right. And then we know that 3 times 3 happens first.
All righty. Unary negation associates right to left. People love that term, associativity. Just meaning that if you have minus 9, you treat that right to left. That doesn't sound right. Forget it, I'm not going to explain it because I just confused myself. All right. Alrighty, see, that's why I got confused. The slide is wrong, so I'm not going to ask you this on the exam. But associativity is the order in which the things are processed. Addition and subtraction are done left to right, right? So is multiplication and division, left to right. What are the only things that are done right to left? I can only find a few. Ternary conditional. It has to solve the thing on the right side before it can go to the left. And then prefixes are done right to left. You know, you take that value, if you have plus A, you have to know the value of A before you can do the plus on it. And that's a good thing to mention. When I was talking about which do you prefer, A++ or ++A, the increment operator, A++ is the same as A equals A plus 1. Also, ++A is the same as A equals A plus 1. So they're exactly the same. No, they're not. If the plus comes after the variable, it means it's the last thing that happens in the expression. If the plus happens before the variable, it means it's the first thing that happens in the expression. It happens right away before anything else is solved. So if I do this, A is equal to 10, and then B is equal to A++, and then I print out A followed by a space, followed by B, what is it going to print? Or why don't I just write it out? What is A? What is B? Well, let's figure it out. If the plus follows a variable, it means it's the last thing that happens. So A gets copied across the equal sign, and then A is incremented. So what is B? It's equal to 10. And then A is equal to 11. Hope that makes sense. Now let's do it again, but let's put the plus as a prefix. Increment operator is a prefix. That means it's the very first thing that happens. So what is A after it evaluates? Well, we took 10 and we added 1 to it, right? So it's, sometimes y'all don't know when I'm expecting answers and when I'm asking rhetorical questions. So it's 11. All right, and then what is B? Well, this happened before the equal sign because it was a prefix. So meaning this was already changed to 11 by the time it was copied into B, which means that B is also 11. Same for the decrement operator. A minus minus, that's a suffix, means the minus minus is the very last thing that happens. Minus minus A as a prefix means the minus minus is the very first thing that happens. So we do this. A is equal to 10. B is equal to minus minus A. What is B equal to? It's equal to 10 or 9? What does the minus minus as a prefix mean? Is it the first thing that happens or the last?
First thing.
It's the first thing. So A becomes 9, right? Then it gets copied into B. So B is equal to 9. All right, one more. C is equal to 13. D is equal to minus minus C. Nope, nope, nope. We already did prefix. Suffix. So what is D equal to? It's equal to 13 because if it's a suffix, it means it's the last thing that happens. So C gets copied over into D, and then C is decremented. All right, we're going to get wiggy here. A is equal to 10, B is equal to 20, C is equal to A minus minus plus, now let's do minus minus A. And let's lower these numbers because large numbers hurt my brain. Okay, minus minus A times B plus plus. Alrighty then. How are we going to treat it? Which ones do we have to do before the thing is evaluated, and which ones do we do after the thing is evaluated?
So do A before, B after.
Yeah, so the prefix means that has to be done before anything else. So what does that turn into? If I'm going to copy this and replace those variables with numbers, what is A at the end of this? It was a 4, now it's a 3. Okay, so if it's a suffix, do we go ahead and solve that now, or do we wait until the end?
Wait until the end.
Wait until the end. So what is that equal to at this moment in time?
5.
It's equal to a 5, and so that means that C is 15. But then the B got incremented. So A finally wound up being 3, B finally wound up being 6, and C is finally equal to 15. Am I going to ask one that complicated? Probably not. Am I going to ask that kind of that kind? Yeah, I will.
Are you going to take roll, Professor?
Good idea. In fact, it's time to do that. I could take it based on who turned in the quiz. Is there anybody who didn't do the quiz? Raise your hand. What? I know you're here, though, because you'd already done the quiz before, right? Yeah, okay. Anybody else who didn't turn the quiz in? And it's 8:22, so it's time to wrap things up. So I'll see y'all on Tuesday. You have a little bit of homework over the weekend, unless you already did it.
Conversions.
Yep, 2 more conversions. I see hands back there. Sorry. Yeah.
Horn.
Too big and or less.